Hey folks, good evening. My name is Heather Nickerson, co-founder and CEO of Artifacts. I'm joined tonight with my co-founder, Ellen Goodwin, along with three esteemed panelists. We are thrilled tonight to bring to you one of the most often asked for presentations on our end from this past year. How do we protect, preserve, and even organize all of our stuff, both digital and physical? Tonight, we've got three guests that are going to share their expertise with us. First up is Andrew Maher. He's the co-founder of Infinity Trunk. Andrew's responsible for producing each and every trunk to the company's rigorous standards. He is an American Welding Society certified welder, former head of manufacturing at multiple companies, and former welding teacher. He has a dog named Gabby, and according to Andrew, she's the best. Hopefully Gabby can join us for tonight's conversation, Andrew. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Infinity Trunk, we're going to learn a lot about them in tonight's talk. But it truly is an amazing product to protect everything, all of your stuff, from those family heirlooms to those must-have mementos. Up next, we have Jen Libby. Jen is the creative content director with Archival Methods. Archival Methods manufactures and sells archival storage and presentation supplies. They're a small company in Rochester, New York with a big reach. They've been in business for over 20 years, and they've become a trusted supplier to artists, archives, museums, and individuals worldwide. As creative content director, Jen works to simplify the complicated task of archivally storing one's personal archive. That was a bit of a tongue twister. She has a long history of making, collecting, and caring for photographs, starting with an anonymous daguerreotype her dad gave her when she was young, initiating a lifelong fascination with found photographs. Jen and the team at Archival Methods we're very proud to have them as part of our Allies and Stuff. You'll hear Ellen and I talk about how our own experiences using their archival products to protect some of our most important papers and photos and the like. And then last, but certainly not least, is Kristen Goodman, owner of Clicking with Kristen. Kristen and her daughter Madison share more than just a mother-daughter bond. They share a passion for preserving the memories that shape lives. Kristen has a meticulous eye for detail and a very personal approach. She's helped countless families digitize, organize, and protect their cherished memories for decades to come. Kristen also is an expert on how to protect, preserve, and save those storm-damaged photos, especially living in a hurricane zone. Together, Kristen and Madison are not just preserving moments, they're creating a legacy for their clients and for themselves. And we're thrilled to have Kristen with us tonight to share her tips on how to protect and preserve those photos and those memories. So with that, we're going to jump into tonight's conversation. Please feel free again to pop your questions into chat. We will definitely have time at the end to answer all the questions. And we'll try, if you've got a burning question, we'll try to make sure we get it to Andrew, Jen, or Kristen during the conversation. If you've got, Ellen's already popped into chat the links for each company and how to contact each of our panelists. And since we always get asked this, yes, this session will be recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube channel tomorrow, along with the contact information for Andrew, Jen, and Kristen. So with that, that was a lot. I'm going to turn it over to Ellen to get us started tonight. Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled you're here.
Thank you, Heather. So I am super excited that Andrew's joining us. He's going to pop on the screen. We were connected through a mutual acquaintance, and I think our 30-minute call went like an hour and a half, and we couldn't help ourselves because what he talks about, what is fireproof? I think all of us are trying to do the best we can, right? We go to the store, it says fireproof, and we buy it, and we put our cherished things in it, and we think we're good. But are we? So Andrew's here not only to share with us what is an infinity trunk and what's the next generation, maybe even infinity trunk. He can give us a little preview. But I really wanted him to also talk about, like, for us general consumers, what is fireproof? What is it not? Where can we get tripped up? And what should we look for? So Andrew, welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys having me here. Honestly, I speak about this so often when I'm when I'm out and about, I'm not even trying to push the product very often. But when I get a chance to talk about it, I get very excited because it's the world is let's see, companies are here to trick you. I think the people that the Artifacts and have aligned with are not trying to, but generally speaking, there are massive corporations out here trying to convince you that every safe and every storage object is actually fireproof. And unfortunately, I know you're probably thinking right now, well, I have my documents in a fireproof pouch. I bought it at Target. There's no way they'd lie. Unfortunately, the news is that they absolutely did, and that there is probably a pretty small chance that you were actually sold something that will protect it through a fire longer than about 6 minutes. It's an unfortunate realization that we all have to kind of come to, but that's why I'm here with Infinity Trunk to try and, one, educate people, and two, help correct the imbalance here in fireproofing. So I am the founder of Infinity Trunk. I'll tell you a little bit about what it is. So what it is was we created the world's first and only fireproof and waterproof keepsake trunk. And now that's a fun tagline to say. The word fireproof is almost like saying a food is natural. It's not. That's a marketing term. Nothing's fireproof. If the sun explodes tomorrow, nothing's going to make it, right? So we're always everything could go eventually, but what it is a duration under very, very specific timelines and instances that the Underwriters Laboratory, or if you see anything on a product that says UL certified or UL certification, it'll say the little circle of a UL in it. What that is a group of scientists who have rigorously or attempted to test a product to make sure it's not going to catch your house on fire, or kind of do what they say it does to an extent. Now, each product that you have in your home, most of them made and sold in the US will have some sort of a certification. Some stuff on Amazon doesn't. But when you start seeing these labels, Google them. It'll say UL number, and a few letters and a number. You can look it up and see what it says. And you might actually be surprised as to what they claim on the box versus what they actually tested for. We backtracked to what Infinity Trunk is. We are a storage, a piece of furniture, decorative furniture that sits in your home that is designed to seal itself shut in the event of a house fire. So it came out of necessity. My co-founder Z, who couldn't be here tonight, he was his father-in-law passed away, and they did. If you've ever lost anybody, you go through the same process everyone else does, where the dust settles and then you have to go to their house, right? And so we start cleaning people's things out, and what do? You have the pile that goes to the road, the pile that goes to the garage sale, the pile you want to keep forever, and then you start to decide where those things go from there. And when he was going through this, he found himself with actually in the Infinity Trunk on the main website, the things that are in the trunk were his father-in-law's things. So what we found was that he just said, okay, well, this feels very disingenuous to essentially put an entire man's life into a Rubbermaid tote and stick it in your basement. He had an instance where I think he had a flood or something in his kitchen happened in his house. And he's like, this is crazy. I can't believe this entire man's legacy. He was in AA. He had all these notebooks and things of him writing to his family and all these things that are just absolutely irreplaceable. It's not gold and firearms and things that you're trying to keep away. It's the things that it's your kid's first drawing they gave you. It's the things that, like, if you lost, I mean, if you've ever been in a house fire, the people I speak to they're shattered. And only when they start to think about it, right? Because in that moment, it's just too much to think about. It's 2 years down the line when you realize you don't have that recipe book from your grandmother you're used to. It's those things. So, like, the idea was that he went online and he just looked up, there's got to be a fireproof box I can put in my house. He's pretty sentimental. He always wanted to kind of have it around his living room, end of his bed, a hope chest, some sort of a situation where he could, he's telling a story and he goes and grabs the baseball mitt that is whatever someone gave him. Stuff like that, where it's always in arm's reach versus, say, even storage or even a safe that's so ugly you got to put it in your garage. There's just no other options. So that was when he started looking and realized that there wasn't anything. And then that's when he found me. And so when we started doing a testing, I loved the idea so much. I was building custom furniture. I was out on my own doing my thing, and you know what? It just seemed like too good of an idea to not keep pushing forward. He called me out for the prototype, and then we joined. We partnered up following that, and we really tested this thing to make sure we were doing something positive for the world here. So what we ended up doing was we came up with a 42 inches long, 22 inches deep, 22 inches tall, about the size of a regular chest, a hope chest, what you think of as a steamer trunk or of that nature. But what it is there is a inch-and-a-half thick fireproof core that has a several layers of different types of fireproofing that do different jobs. And then it is TIG welded and sealed shut to essentially create, if you could imagine what's under the wood, a really high-end Yeti cooler. So it's completely sealed shut, and then all of the wood is actually hardwood, locally sourced. I mean, sourced from the Midwest the best we can, made out of oak and birch, depending on what color you pick, and slowly turning into ash wood as well. We're going to start mixing up some different variations of it, but essentially, what we realized was that safes are dangerous because or aren't great in fires because there's so much metal, right? So we're not trying to keep people from breaking it. You know, someone opens this, they're robbing your house, they open it up and see your grandmother's wedding dress, and they're like, I can't believe I wasted my time on this. The idea is that it's invaluable, it's invaluable to the other people, right? And so we have one simple lock on the front that is actually going to go away and become a key situation, but I can talk about that in a second. And we have and the idea is that this lid, now I'll back this up. I'm all over the place, but it's 300 pounds, and I can't see your faces, but I'm sure you're like, right. So we white glove deliver this thing to your house. It's essentially getting a fridge delivered where the minute you order it, the pricing for the shipping is included in the overall cost. You would find yourself filling out all the information that we would need to get it to you. And we set it up just like you would any other piece of furniture being delivered, where they come in, they remove all of the boxes, they let you open it up for the first time. And inside there are sliders for carpet, sliders for hardwood. They can put them on for you directly immediately if you need to, you know, if you're just not sure and you just had them set it down somewhere. But essentially the delivery team, we've partnered up with a company that has someone in virtually every city in America to be able to deliver and assemble, and it's not assemble, but essentially break down and remove all of the debris and cardboard and get you set up there. What's on it, and what we realize other safes don't have, is that the other safes don't want to be actually waterproof because you're sealing in what would be essentially guns, which could rust if the humidity was not perfect in there. And so what we've done is we've developed a seal system where there's 5 different, technically 6, but 5 different visible fireproof and waterproof seals that keep a lot of smoke and water. And then out in case, say, half your house catches on fire and then the other half doesn't, but it still gets pretty hot and gets absolutely dumped in water. It keeps all the smoke and the water away from items that normally would find themselves getting smoke damage in maybe an average safe. Or average just out on top of your fridge because you didn't know what to do with it, you know. The idea was that, and then inside, to correct the issue that they don't necessarily think of, is that we have an intumescent, essentially a giant silica bag that they use in the Amazon rainforest and parts of the Southeast Asia to keep cars and things from molding. Essentially what this is a giant silica pack that recharges itself. There's a dot on the front that tells you when to stick it in the microwave for a few minutes and cook some of the moisture out. This is only going to really happen if you're in, like, you know, Miami or Houston, but it keeps track of it. And we send you an email every 6 months that says, hey, open that thing up if you haven't and check to see if that dot is ready to be recharged. Then you put it right back in, close the lid. If you never open it, if you don't open it for another 6 months, we have not found anywhere yet that has found anyone who needed to do it more often. And you could always check if you're nervous. If you're doing as we'll see with the other archival methods, stuff, that the archival documents and things. If you're that nervous, you could absolutely check it more often. And we find ourselves with it. So what ends up happening is there's a seal on the outside that if it's in the fire, it literally expands 7 times its size, turns into a glue, and seals the entire trunk shut for the duration of the fire. The wood that we clad it on is actual hardwood, and that wood burns and essentially turns into solid carbon, which adds another 5/8 thick layer of fireproofing on the outside. With these fireproofing tests, there are a lot of safes, and I'll try to. I know I'm running pretty quick here. Oh gosh, this pitch is too long. I'm sorry. One more minute. The actual fireproofing test, a lot of the safes are lying to people because they say UL certified fireproof, but they're actually talking about the break-in resistance, not so much the fireproofing, because again, there's no group calling them out. A lot of the fireproofing side is that essentially the idea is that certain things burn and melt at certain temperatures, and UL breaks them down based on half-hour to hour increments and what temperature they hit at. And they can just say they're fireproof and never have to check that. So just as a tidbit, and hopefully I can explain a little bit more in the questions section, but it's a tidbit. If you're ever buying one of these and you don't even buy an infinity trunk, you buy another object, just Google those UL certifications on the side of the box, or the Intertech logo will have a number. That's a very similar testing scenario, and they will, you'll be surprised or hopefully excited that they actually did the right thing. Most general companies, if you're buying them at Costco, they're not fireproof. If you're buying them from a safe company, you might actually be doing a good job, but it's something you want to keep track of. And I only say that because people think they have fireproof safes. They go back, they open them up, and nothing's left but the guns. So we just, and I make them here in Chicago. We have a team of welders doing it, and I have to sleep at night knowing that it works. And that's my promise, you know, and so there's a lot going on with that. But anyways, I'm going to let it pass on the next. They said 10 minutes. I'm at 11:25. I knew I would go over, but I will, I'll answer any questions. I know I touched about 30 things in the explanation. Generally, I can't do this in an elevator. I generally corner someone with a drink somewhere and get about a good 22 to 28 minutes where I can really sell them. But honestly, I just appreciate being here. And if you have any questions about fireproofing or anything like that, I can send you links to different UL certification pages, different things for you to check on your own. Don't always use AI summaries for certifications. They can be vague and they pull things from Reddit, which might not be true. And it's just important to make sure that if you're keeping something that cannot be replaced or is worth a ton of money, that you got to look into the actual background of who made that for you.
Andrew, this is fabulous. And can I interrupt with 2 questions before we move on to our next speaker? Just 2 quick questions. When we talked, you talked about the fires out in California, and you talked about the difference of a home fire versus a surrounding area kind of forest fire. For a home fire, what's the typical duration and temperature that we need to be thinking about?
So typical home fire, they test it sits around 1200 degrees and they test at 1550. A typical forest fire ranges anywhere between 1500 and 2800 degrees, depending on how much wind, the density of the woods around you, and the proximity of homes and different things nearby. And the what you should be looking for is that if you're looking for something that could withstand actually withstand a forest fire level amount, those are 4-hour fire ratings, because they're hoping that they can get fire ratings break down by the hour, half hour, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And each one of those, as the length goes on, the temperature goes up. So 1 hour is 1700, 2 hours is 1850, 3 hours is 1920, 4 hours is 2000. And so as those certifications get more intense, it's more like once you hit those 4-hour marks, that's a government building level. You know, they start doing explosion tests and dropping them off of buildings and things of that nature. For your average home, average house fire, you're looking for a half-hour to a 1-hour rating. If you live out in the middle of nowhere, Montana, you should get a 3-hour rating, because those volunteer firefighters are going to have to get up in the middle of the night, put their boots on, go down, get in the trucks, come out to your house. It could be a half hour before they even get water on it. I live in Chicago. Our response time's 2.5 minutes. So it just depends on if you're interested or nervous. You could look up on your local municipality what their fire response time is, and then understand a little bit better how much or what the rating should be for your situation.
Awesome. And one last quick question: 300 pounds. Is there any rule of thumb of where it can't go in a house if it's 2 stories? Like, are we worried about structural engineering at 300 pounds in a house?
So yes, for the most part, if you are so generally what I would say is first floor if you can. Modern homes, there's such a degree and variation between how homes were built in the early 1900s all the way up until now, that newer modern homes and the way that the drywall is, the gypsum board is, you'll see them collapse. You'll see them, 2 stories brought down to absolute rubble, and that's completely possible. But oftentimes, small kitchen fires and things of that nature, where either you put it out or someone else, or they're able to put it out before it becomes an entire structure fire, for the most part will not damage the upper floors. So in discussions with firefighters, because again, I didn't know much about the actual fire rating. So we hung out with a bunch of firefighters. We talked to as many as we could, had a bunch of phone calls and meetings with all these people. And I asked about basements. We put them in the basement, and they said your basement can actually find itself getting even hotter if you have natural gas in your home and your lines go off in your start blazing fires in before the plugs inside the walls start sealing up, realizing there's a fire. So I would avoid basements, but first floor is the best recommendation. We just love a good living room or an end of a bed on a primary bedroom.
Fabulous, Andrew. And I know we'll have more questions, but for now, we're going to switch gears. Thank you. Thank you. Over to Jen from Archival Methods and my co-founder, Heather.
Hi. Oh, was it Heather or me?
Nope, it's you, Jen. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you tonight. We want to let you dive right in
Okay, sorry.
and tee up what you do at Archival Methods, how you all help people preserve that archival grade, be it documents, be it photos, be it even family heirlooms. I know I talked with Angela years ago. My family discovered these old Bibles that were from the 1800s sitting out in the garage. They were in German. It's still a family mystery. How they came into our possession, whose they were, none of us have German heritage that we're aware of, but the important part was Angela, Jen's business partner, was able to help us find the right archival grade box for it to safely store them, rescue them from that Cape Cod garage, and have a very happy ending. So with that, Jen, over to you to share about Archival Methods and how you all help people protect those family heirlooms.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm just going to jump right in. One debate in the industry is to save or not to save, right? Because we have so much stuff. But I tend to say save. I digitize and then try and properly store the originals is our approach and what we recommend to people. Even before I worked for Archival Methods, it's not just because I work for a company that sells storage supplies. I really truly believe this. Originals are accessible. I have this photo album I was going to show you that you all can you see it? Recognize with the magnetic pages. I could look at the pictures of my mom's house when we bought it in '85, and if it was on a digital format, from '85, if they had it, it wouldn't be so, but accessible. So we sell storage boxes for a variety of items like objects, but the main ones that we talk about a lot and get questions from customers are photographs, books, and letters. Paper objects tend to be more fugitive than other objects, and so we really spend a lot of time talking to people about that. And one big reason that they're so fugitive, I mean, it's paper, but prior to the mid-20th century, they didn't have archival standards, so they weren't making paper that was archival, really. And a lot of paper still is not made to archival standards because it costs more money. And so the acids and lignins present in the paper would degrade, but also those things that were in the storage containers. The shoe boxes is a classic example. The old albums, the black paper, that paper was not very good either. And then the locations that people store their images, photos and books, attics and basements, and that's just a no-no. So yeah, I'm just going to go over what we tell people frequently, and we say layers of protection.
Hey, Jen, before you jump into the layers of protections, we do have a question about fugitive, and what do you mean by that in talking about that archival grade?
So fugitive just means that it is more likely to degrade quickly than, say, a sculpture made out of glass if you don't break it, or even something made of metal. Paper is just so much more fragile. So that's what I mean about fugitive. And then I'm going to talk about the different storage environments that will help preserve it and make it last longer. So the first layer of protection is the home environment, locations in your home, and what do the items need to be protected from. So the first is light, UV, which is sunlight, and fluorescent light also have a lot of UV light in them. Most people don't really have fluorescent lights in their homes so much, but if you are in an office, oftentimes there are fluorescent lights. And you can look at curtains in your home or book jackets that get a lot of exposure to light, and you can see how they fade. So this is obviously going to affect books and paper objects. So keep it out of the light. Temperature and humidity extremes and fluctuations. So hopefully, if you're lucky, you have climate controlled space that you live in. And
So Jen, you're saying that Cape Cod garage was a really, really, really bad place to store paper books, essentially.
yes, yes, yeah. So I'm glad you got them out of there. So yeah, we had a little thing, we have a booklet, a little guide that we give out, and it has a picture of a house and it has X's. It has the grayed out, the attic, the basement, and the garage are just not good places. And so some other things that can affect your objects are insects and other critters. People don't think of that. And critters like bats and mice are going to be more in attics and basements and places you don't go. So they can do a lot of damage, the nesting and other things. And insects, same thing. They tend to be more in those areas. Now, water and fire, which we have just talked about a little bit or heard about. And obviously in the East, I feel like we have water is a bigger threat. Obviously, people still have fires, but we don't have so far the massive forest fires that are going on out West. And there's only so much you can do about that. But as far as water that's from your house, which is actually probably the bigger threat, you can, again, attics and basements and garages are more at risk, especially attics from leaking roofs. You want to store your items away from where pipes would be, if through the walls, so not near that, not under bathrooms. So we recommend interior closet shelves are like an ideal place usually in a house if you have the space. So after the house, then we get into the boxes and binders. So the next level of protection. So archival and photosafe are not regulated terms. Anybody can slap them on their product. They do. So I wouldn't just trust that if it says archival or photosafe that it actually is. Do your homework, find trusted suppliers, and look for specifications and PAT testing. I'll talk a little bit more about what that is in a minute. So what else damages your paper-based collections? As I mentioned earlier, there's acids and lignins. And most people have heard the term acid-free, and it's a term used loosely for paper made from pulp with a pH above 7 or greater. And it refers to the acidity at the time of manufacture. So eventually things do tend to, over time, get more acidic, but the lignin is what's the problem. So if it's not lignin free, then it's going to create a lot more acid and degrade a lot quicker. So lignins should have paper that is, or you should look for paper that's made with less than 1% lignin content. Acid free doesn't necessarily mean lignin free. Lignin's the organic substance in plants that makes cell walls strong and rigid, so plants need lignin, but our paper does not, and it's more expensive to take it out, so a lot of times there's still lignin left in papers. And a good example of what lignin does to paper is newsprint and like really cheap old paperbacks, how they turn yellow, and that's from the lignin in the paper. Producing acid over time as it reacts to light and heat. And buffered. Okay, we're going to talk about buffering next. This is another thing that suppliers frequently do who are making and selling archival supplies, and it is using calcium carbonate it's added to the paper during the when they're manufacturing it to make the paper more alkaline. So that helps neutralize the acids formed during aging. As I mentioned, eventually they'll start to form. And so if it will avoid it being affecting the items that are stored in your boxes. So 3% calcium carbonate buffering is a good thing to get. Also, things that people don't think about with old albums or any album that you get is you should think about what you're using to hold your images into the albums. Tapes and glues and things can often also be acidic or not really good for your photographs, or they off-gas chemicals that discolor and damage your photographs. The PAT is the only standardized test for long-term photo-safe materials, and it's from the Image Permanence Institute, also in Rochester here where we are. And it's dedicated to the development of best practices for preserving images. And so PAT stands for Photographic Activity Test. And so companies that are claiming to have archival supplies should be submitting their supplies to the Image Permanent Institute and having it tested to make sure it is actually archival. And so we do that at Archival Methods. And our website has little descriptions of the products, but then there's tabs, and one is called specifications, and that's where you can find out that we've tested it and that it's acid-free and lignin-free and buffered and such. So definitely look for that when you're shopping for these things. So then the next layer would be sleeves, envelopes, and pages. So I'm kind of going through these different layers that you would get into. And sometimes just a box is great. An archival box is a really good place to start. But sometimes people get sleeves, bags, binder pages, and people are frequently asked, are they acid free? But it actually isn't a term that applies to plastics. But instead, the materials should be inert and stable. And non-archival photo storage supplies are often made from polyvinyl chloride, PVC, or vinyl, which are very bad, and you want to avoid those. Plasticizers make this compound unstable and it deteriorates quickly and it will damage photos. So instead, look for materials made from one of the inert plastics, which are polyester, polypropylene, and polyethylene. And it's interesting, I took an online course this past fall about plastics and museum storage, and it was fascinating. I never really thought about storing plastic items, and the 20th century is full of plastic art, and it's very challenging because it's also a pretty fugitive material and very widely varied. That's sort of a little bit of a divergence, but plastic sleeves and fire could be a problem. So when we're talking about using plastic sleeves, it is a good thing. You can handle your photos without touching them. You can see through it. But if there were a fire and the plastic melted, then it's going to ruin your photo. So it is one thing I like to caution people about. And then you can also get paper sleeves that are buffered and acid-free if you would prefer to do that. And then, am I running out of time? Sorry, I'm not really paying attention, but boxes versus binders is another big question. And it really comes down to budget and accessibility. We have some really nice binders. This is our collector grade binder and slipcase. So as you can see, the slipcase is nice because it protects everything from dust. So it kind of seals it all in. And that's a really great product, and it comes in different sizes, and you can get different types of pages depending on what you want to do. And then the other workhorse is our metal edge box. And this is a simple kit. And really it just comes with, I don't know how well you can see everything, but little dividers. And you can, and obviously they're all archival. So to just sort your photos and label different, time periods or where you are and such. So I would say, which one do you prefer? Which one are you going to look at it often? Are you going to show it to people? Because the box isn't as convenient and you'll be touching the photos more. And you have to think about that, which we do recommend gloves when you're handling your photographs.
Hey, Jen, can I interrupt with a quick question for you about the boxes?
Yeah, I was actually pretty much towards the end, so.
Yes. When you're not using it for photos, when you have these collection boxes and archival methods, folks, if you have a lot of heirlooms or mementos and you want to box them, one question that we get all the time is it safe? Or like, are there certain things you can't pair together in a box? Because one thing, like a metal object, might damage a cloth. I don't know. I don't know the right examples, but are there things that you tell people do not put them in the same box? They will hurt each other.
That I would say plastics, from what I learned from that class, they tend to off gas a lot. So I would definitely actually avoid putting like, plastic objects in of unknown origins,
Great example.
and film is actually like that. Like if you have motion picture film, Super 8 or whatever, I would probably try and keep that in its own box.
All right. And then there is one question in the chat. Are there safe photo corners for attaching photos to non-lignin paper? Or
To
lignin paper?
to non-lignin?
Well, to lignin free. Like
Yeah, to
how do you,
archival. Yes.
yeah, is there some safe way to fix the photos?
Yes. We have multiple photo corners. We have ones out of the approved plastic if you want to work with the plastic ones, clear. We also have paper ones that are archival, and we have a thing called Goody Dots. It's kind of an unusual name. It's from Germany, and I love them. You would just put a little bit of them on the back of your image and attach it to your page, and it's very reversible, and it's just a little easier than putting corners on all your pictures. And one more thing I was just going to mention was if you like, I don't know if you guys can see behind me, but I have a lot of boxes from Archival Methods. I have a lot of found photos, and I'm still in the process of sorting and cataloging, but you need a system if you have a fair amount.
And that may be a great segue.
Know what's in every box without opening and digging through it. So you need to start creating. Yeah.
Jen, I think you're cutting out, but I think that's a wonderful segue into Kristen talking about what's inside the boxes. How do we organize? How do we preserve those photos? And I do see there's some more questions for Jen. We'll get to those at the end of the presentation tonight, so we promise we'll answer them. But Kristen, we'd love to have you jump in on the conversation. Let's dive down into the world of photos, and what advice do you have for our listeners on how to best protect and preserve their photos?
Well, it was great to have Jen talk about archival methods, since that's one of my favorite products. And I have lots of those things too. So like was mentioned earlier, I live in Naples, Florida. And so yes, we've had hurricanes. I appreciate Andrew's information about fires and these cases. I got questions for him too. But my main thing is the digitization process. I do a lot of digitizing here, and I do agree with Jen as well. Like, you need boxes to store things in because that is your original copy if you want to keep it. But what I've been finding too is, especially since we've had several hurricanes in our area, is digitizing things and can I throw it away? Oh, I said it, throw it away. Sorry, girls. But sometimes people do have too much stuff. But what we do in our business is we use regular scanners. I still have Kodak equipment, yay Rochester. I have Kodak equipment and Epson equipment. And then we also do camera scanning. So we can scan print photos, memorabilia, documents, awards. We photograph the stuff, things, just heirlooms and different items. And then, we use the artifacts that Heather and Ellen represent too, which is wonderful. But just keeping all those photos together, I try to share with my clients and people, keep what tells your story. I think we mentioned earlier, everybody has a lot of stuff, too. And I work with a lot of clients here that are downsizing and want to share things with their family members. So a lot of times I'm just helping them to get it digitized, copy it to a drive, share that, put it out in the cloud somewhere. So lots of different options. But the whole digitization process for me, especially during Hurricane Ian a few years ago, people bring in the wet stuff. We mentioned fires a little while ago, but how to protect when things happen like that. So put your stuff in the freezer if you have power to in between parchment paper to keep mold from growing. I mean, it's things that we've learned how to store things temporarily. that really make you want to digitize things, you know. But I do love Jen's corner. I'm going to keep going back to her because I do love the archival boxes. I love behind you, Jen, all your awesome boxes like that. One of the reasons I use those boxes, they stack so nice. The one of the boxes holds about 2,500 photos, up to 5x7. That's the size of box that I use. The smaller box is more of a shoebox size. It's easier to lift because the larger box could weigh about 20 pounds full of photos. But like for older people and stuff too, to get them down to look at, or my grandma always showed me all the pictures. You know, I picture somebody bringing them down to show them to a grandchild or someone. You just want to be safe with those, but they just have just great products to be able to store things in. And again, all the quality of them that she mentioned is a reason that I love using their products too. But does anybody have any questions about digitizing or anything you want me to share?
Kristen, do you want to share, since you're member of the photo managers,
Yes.
and on the digitization front, I've seen you speak before, and you have some phenomenal advice, kind of like the 1, 2, 3, like how
Sure.
do you go about backing up and digitizing? What's some of your best tips and best practices?
Okay. So we do like the ABCs of photo organizing, we might call them, you know, and then we also how we do the backup part. So maybe we'll start talking about a little bit of sorting. So ABC, like A is your album worthy photos that you want to keep. B might be, oh my gosh, I can't get rid of this one. It's a little bit blurry, but it's the only one I have, and I might want to keep that one. And then C is for can, like trash can. So that helps you, you know, think about, I can get rid of some things, right? So then once we sort your items and get them organized in your categories, year, month, event, person, whatever, in the boxes, we would scan them and digitize them. And then it would be just like your photo box, your print photos would go onto your digital drive. That's how we scan them. We name them by year, we name them by whatever. So just like if I could take the copy of that box, it's going to look like that in the digital format. And then what's important with that is you want to have it backed up in 3 different places. Again, because, you know, fires, floods, the whole thing, you know, the crash of your computer, you never know when it's going to happen. You know, it's not the if, it's the when. So, but I always tell people 3 places. So you want to have everything on your computer. Then you want to have it on an external drive, which an external drive can look like this, just little small, little tiny thing now. And then you want to have it backed up in a cloud, you know, in a cloud system. It's not a floaty white cloud. It's out there, you know, where everything's backed up. Everybody always looks up to when you talk about cloud, but just making sure that they're in 3 places. And sometimes even people have made an extra copy of that drive and sent it to somebody in a different state, you know, just to be safe. But, you know, then you're updating your things all the time. But just remember that the 1, 2, 3, and that was a good point, Heather. So.
Kristen, question from chat. How do you feel about people writing on the back of photos if they use special pens?
Special pen. So I have the special pencil right here that probably came from Archival Methods. It's the wax pencil, you know, that we can write with, a Stabilo pencil. So this doesn't press through on a photo, which is great. But you can write on the back, and with my scanners that I use, my Kodak equipment that's no longer available, sorry friends, but it'll scan front and back at the same time. Or even if I'm digitizing something on a flatbed, I'll flip it over if it has information, because then it shows the A and the B side. The front side is the photo or the document. The back side could be the information that was written on the back. And that's important for when people are trying to add metadata, or just have that information to share with people, the names of their family members and, you know, where it was at, the year, you know, different things. And there are pens as well. And Jen might want to mention those. There are some archival pens that you can use too, but I just love using the wax pencil, and I usually give it to a new client when I do my first consultation with them for them to start doing that.
No, we love that. And maybe Jen can throw a link into chat from Archival Methods where we can find that. And Archival Methods was super sweet and has a discount code for you all as well. So I'm going to repeat that into chat and then stop talking so Heather can talk.
But I love how Heather says too, pictures can't talk. So this is the pencil, the writing on the back. Heather, that helps your pictures talk, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Quick question for you, Kristen, or maybe Jen, either one. Is the Stabilo pencil, is that similar to a China marker, what are the differences, or would you use a China marker in the back of photos? Can you talk a bit about that?
I don't know about that.
I can jump in if you want.
Yeah, great.
So I think it's the same. I'm not sure, but they seem very similar. You can write on glass or plastic. They're very versatile. And we actually reached out to Image Permanence Institute a year or two ago and asked what would they recommend for writing on the backs of photos. And because we get that question all the time, it's really popular. And #2 pencil, if you have anything that's before the plastic era, the RC coated paper, which came about in the 70s, 80s, probably. So anything that has more of a paper feel to it, you can use a #2 pencil on the back. And for the more modern plastic coated ones, they recommended graphite pencils that are softer than, so like 6B and 4B, so a softer graphite pencil. The thing that I started to notice about the Stabilo is that you couldn't erase it. Somebody had written to us and they're like, maybe on the backs of the photos you could, but on their album pages, they couldn't erase it. So you can erase graphite. So I'm sorry, that was kind of a long answer.
No, that's great. Thank you, Jen. I want to, Kristen, before we jump into general questions, anything else to add from your expertise on preserving, protecting those photos?
Just keep them, they like to live where you live. Like, you mentioned earlier about, they need to live in your house, like where it's, temperature controlled and things like that. You definitely want to keep things out of the, garage, Heather. You want to keep it,
Guilty as charged.
it has to live where you live. And it's okay to have it temporarily in, Rubbermaid containers. I always joke clear is my favorite color. I like to see what's in a clear bin, but it is something that's tedious, and that's why the photo managers, there's lots of us all around, like, to help people, and and even home organizers that can help people to start downsizing and going through that process. I know I get a lot of people that have inherited things from family members, and and your pile just keeps getting in the pile, but I love the example somebody said on a call I did one time that said, if you were getting into a little Fiat car, what could you grab? Like, if fire, hurricane, whatever. So that's where I feel like the digitizing is like, okay, I could grab a drive in my baby books or whatever, So I just try to say less is more. Keep what tells your story, and just take the time to go through your things, especially with your elderly people, so they can tell your story, because the stories are just as important as the photos.
That's so true. Thank you, Kristen, for sharing that. And I love the photos like to live where you live. I may have to go through my house this weekend to make sure that all my photos are living where I would want to live.
Good.
Okay, let's jump back. We've got about 10 minutes left. I want to jump back. We've got a bunch of questions that came in throughout the conversation tonight. So I'm going to jump back up to the top. And I think, Andrew, we've got a bunch for you to start with. Let me make sure I find them.
I have one ready for Andrew. Well, Heather's scrolling. I had the advantage of scrolling. Andrew, why is it 300 pounds?
Okay, so listen,
In
every
layman's
day-
terms.
no, this is good. Every day I wake up and I say, how do I make it lighter? And the only thing to do is make it cheaper. So what it is that the steel itself is about 85 pounds, and then there's gaskets and things that help you, because the lid that lifts up is 75 pounds alone. So we actually have gas springs that when you open this thing up like a trunk door, the whole thing opens up, and it's fun. It's a nice touch. Also, because it's airtight, it kind of does like a whole like thump when it closes. It's very fun. But on the other side of it, the fireproofing material that's inside is a version of fireproofing, essentially gypsum. So imagine just imagine drywall, but multiple layers of it. It's solid rock that's integrated with stone. So the actual stone has been liquefied and then mixed, and essentially they create bubbles where there's pockets of water and water vapor trapped in there. And each sheet of this stuff is almost 80 pounds. We use two and a little bit more sheets of it. The real overall weight is 275, and then you add the wood on the outside, about 15 more pounds. It's just, if we made it any lighter, it just wouldn't work as well. And we tried, and every time it just didn't come anywhere near the certification requisites that we were looking for.
Thank you, Andrew.
No problem.
Another question from our members tonight. Is the trunk reusable if it's in a fire or flood?
So this is actually one of the best parts of the trunk, and the fact that it is not. But once you buy one, if you send us a accident report, whether it be fire or flood, for that you file with your insurance as to what happened, we'll send you a new one wherever you end up. So here's the thing: is that it is guaranteed to work. The issue is that they're going to look awful no matter what. If it flooded, you don't know what's in flood water. It is disgusting. Everything in the world is coming out of those pipes, and it is then in your home. So even if it survives a week underwater, you're going to find yourself not wanting that anywhere near your house ever again. And then the fire is going to get burnt up, and the seals that actually, let's just say it's in the room where the fire is, the seal that expands and creates a glue to seal itself shut will be wasted. Once it cools down, it becomes a plastic that then seals the creases and the crevices to make sure nothing else gets through it. And so that just can't be used, and the wood is going to be charred. 20,000 gallons of water is going to get around your trunk. If it sits in water, you go to a hotel for a few days. You come back and it's still wet, or say you put it in the basement, or you're in a first floor crawl space situation, and it's there. It's going to be soaked in the water. The wood will be damaged. You will not want that in your next home, and you just reach out to us and we'll handle it. It's a risk we take, but 1 in 2 Americans will have a house fire situation in their lifetime, whether it's just hitting your stove or not. And we just feel like it's the right thing to do at this rate. And if we run out of money and go bankrupt because we gave too many away, then that's a sign that there's too many fires, and we should probably be just figuring out other things in life. So that's just, we'll play bankruptcy when we get there, you know what I mean? But at this point, we're resending you a new one when you find your new home. It could be months. I've had friends and people who were in rentals and hotels and extended stays for 2 weeks. You don't know where your next address is if they're not fixing your house. And if they're fixing your house, it could be even longer. So the renovation system. So you let us know when it's time to send it, and then we'll send it. So far, we haven't had too many people actually find themselves in a fire, luckily. So we're in a situation where it's still the promise.
Andrew, when we spoke before this evening, Andrew made a really excellent point. If someone is selling you a fireproof box, and it includes a fireproof pouch to go inside the box, you need to wonder why the thing inside the box that's fireproof also needs to be fireproof. So I also think there's a little bit of common sense here, because if the box is fireproof, everything inside doesn't need to be fireproof. So I think that's a really big, like, red light warning sign not to buy that box. Kristen, we have a really funny question. Andrew, you're talking about the water, the floods, hurricanes. What does it float?
So technically, it does not float because it's just over the weight for the amount of air capacity that's inside of it. Now, what ends up happening is that how something would float, when you think of the Titanic, you think of these giant cruises, like, how is this thing in the air? How is an airplane in the air? There's science behind it, and the science essentially says, in this case, the amount of air that's trapped inside of the box creates this level of buoyancy. The size that we've settled on for this, and we're working on different sizes as we go, but the size we've settled on does not have enough air pressure in it to float the amount that we're having it. So the idea of an average flood is that it doesn't necessarily come and go, but the chances of it sitting so deep for so long that it's underwater for weeks at a time are slim. But it's hours and hours of being able to withstand pressure, to the point where we went through and took pressure washers to try to cut the seals to see what would happen if the front 2 seals died, and we had to just rely on the last 3 on the inside, and we still were able to keep it from actually getting enough pressure on it. The issue with waterproofing is that it's pressure under it, right? So your cell phone can handle it. A 2 foot of water is not going to break the seals that we have with the weight of the door. It just doesn't happen. The issue is that if it were to drop into the ocean, eventually it just gets enough pressure that it collapses. But no flood in 3, 4, 5, even the worst of North Carolina and all these other issues you're seeing around, are you going to see the pressure on the seals that would cause it to fail in that amount of time?
Thank you, Andrew, for that very detailed explanation. We appreciate that. And I want to thank all of our panelists tonight for joining us. Andrew, you noted just now that 1 in 2 Americans will experience a house fire in their lifetime. And I think it's fascinating because those of you may not know this, but Ellen did experience a house fire when she was a child. So as a co-founder pair, 1 in 2 right there. And I think tonight, listening to, first of all, I wish I had a notebook. Jen, I think you could come back and just teach an entire session alone on archival grade materials and how to use them and what to use them for. That was fascinating. Kristen, every time I hear you speak, I always make a note that I've got to spend the next rainy weekend going through and doing just that, digitizing not just the photos, but the documents, the things that, like the memories, the stories behind them. Like, yes, I do have artifacts and yes, I use artifacts, but I still have shoe boxes, guilty as charged. They should be archival method boxes, but I still have shoe boxes that I inherited from my mother. And I keep putting it aside as one day. But I think sometimes we need that impetus to take that one day. So I think your advice on digitization is really critical. And Andrew, thank you for that detailed explanation of what is and isn't fireproof and for sharing with us how you've built Infinity Trunk. I know as a sitting in on a lot of the photo manager discussions, a big discussion point is, clients thinking they've bought something that's fireproof when it really isn't. And then you're dealing with a really big mess and a lot of disappointment. So we really appreciate you sharing kind of your expertise. And I think the overarching, when you think about how to protect your stuff, be it digital, be it analog, what matters most to you, I think is probably where you might want to start. So if you've got a lot of photos and that's your prized collection, start with Kristen's advice on digitization and organizing. If you are the family keeper and you've got those family heirlooms and they're scattered throughout the house, maybe take a hard look at what, if you couldn't grab everything, what would you want to ensure is protected for generations to come? And then take a look at what Jen and her team offer archival methods, how to ensure that it is ligand-free, it is acid-free, you're not housing plastics with other non-plastic materials. And then when you think about, Andrew shared with his co-founder story with his father and losing some of those items in a flood, those bigger pieces, what do you want to protect there? So as you think about how to protect your stuff, think about what you want to protect and the best way to do so. So we want to say thank you very much for Jen, Kristen, and Andrew for joining us tonight. Thank you all for your questions, audience members. You'll be able to view this episode tomorrow afternoon on our YouTube channel to review what our experts have shared. And if you have any additional questions after the fact, please feel free to reach out to us. You can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, we're at the RT Life, and also sign up for our newsletters if you haven't already for more tips and tricks for dealing with all of life's tough stuff. So with that, we want to say thank you all tonight. Thank you for joining us, and tune in next week for our final episode of Evenings with Artifacts. Ellen, would you like to share what we have in store next week?
Oh, sure. My pleasure. Our finale is an ode to our solo agers. We get a lot of questions about tips for solo agers and how to pass on their stories and their legacy. So we have 2 folks joining us. Our third is our own Heather Nickerson and talking about privacy. But our first is an estate attorney based here out of Austin, Texas, who helps people with their estate plans and their wills. And so she's going to bring in her experience working with solo agers. And we also have David McMahon from fairsplit.com, and he's going to talk about a variety of cases from the fields where it's entire homes full of things that are going through probate. We hope not, but are going to be in a clean out process, and tips for him in working with loved ones for solo agers, community, and others who are going to be inheriting all of this stuff. So we hope you will join us and invite the solo agers in your life.
Thank you so much, all. Have a great night, and we hope to see you next week for the final Evenings with Artifacts spring episode. So with that, thank you all and good night.
Thanks, guys.